Good morning, beautiful people of San Diego. The beautiful people of San Diego on this beautiful day. Okay, so we have lots and lots and lots of things to cover today. Just fucking relax. I'm gonna be here a long time. You know, I'm not gonna let you go till I've said every word of it. All right, but I think we will start with lesson 97 of A Course in Miracles. This is the 97th day of the year, so we'll do lesson 97. I'll just give a quick blurb for anybody who doesn't know what the Course is. A Course in Miracles is a self-study program of spiritual psychotherapy that consists of a textbook, a workbook, and a manual for teachers. The workbook is 365 days of daily meditation that's described as a mind training. It trains the mind to think along the lines that the text sets forth. While A Course in Miracles is not a religion, it does address universal spiritual themes. It says a universal theology is not possible, but a universal experience is not only possible, but necessary. And so A Course doesn't teach any particular kind of behavior, but it does teach a way of thinking. It is really about the relinquishment of a thought system based on fear and the acceptance of a thought system based on love. The Course says an untrained mind can accomplish nothing. So the Course is that part of that training of our minds. And the workbook is 365 days of the first 50 lessons or so are the undoing of the thought system of the world. And then from that point on, it starts to mix sort of the two of continually undoing that old thought system, but then bringing in the new thought system. Today's lesson is super important. And that's it. It's just super important. It's just super important. It's all it really is just everything. That's all. It's just everything. And if you can really start to grasp this concept, which we've already even covered just in the meditation that we've done, then it's going to alleviate a lot of problems. So I never read, not never, but for the most part, when I'm reading to all of you, I don't read the entirety because the Course is so wordy. So I'm not going to read this entire lesson, but I'll just read the parts that are most important for everything that we're going to talk about today. The lesson is, I am Spirit. Today's idea identifies you with your one self. And of course, it's capitalizing self. So it's your eternal true self. Today's idea identifies you with your one self. It accepts no split identity, nor tries to weave opposing factors into unity. It simply states the truth. Practice this truth today as often as you can, for it will bring your mind from conflict to the quiet fields of peace. No chill of fear can enter, for your mind has been absolved from madness, letting go illusions of a split identity. So I'll probably stop 100 times while I'm reading this. So let's, again, since we're talking a lot about the Course in this beginning part, about what the real purpose of A Course in Miracles is. And there are lots of people who teach on the Course who will tell you that the Course in Miracles is about a lot of different things. They'll say about love, and it's about healing relationships, and it's about forgiveness, and it's about da-da-da-da. And all of those things are aspects of the Course, but I'm going to tell you what it's really about. And it's so easy to know. A Course in Miracles is about the attainment of inner peace. All of those other things, forgiveness and love and all of that stuff, are merely the means to fulfilling the goal of the Course. So those are the various paths to inner peace, forgiveness and love and all of that stuff. And if you ever get confused and you remember, what did Jacob say in the Course when I'm out? Just look and see who publishes it. The Foundation for Inner Peace. Ta-da! So everything in the Course is leading us to that inner peace. But it's very important that you recognize that this attainment of inner peace is really just a recognition. So it's not something that we're going to get that we don't have. It's something that's already there that has been obscured by the things that we face every day, basically. And by things, I really mean concepts more than experiences and things. So that's why A Course in Miracles says miracles don't do anything, they undo. It is an undoing process. So to start with the idea, I am spirit, and why he already starts talking about having a split mind, the split mind is the belief that you're something else other than spirit, and that is a thought that has to be undone. So we do this in the meditation all the time. I don't know if you really know why or get it, but in the meditation, where we let go of, first of all the labels that you call yourself, because that's not what you are. First of all, you are not a body. Now, our main experience here on life is body identification, is we think we are this thing. We talked about this, I think, last month, of recognizing when you look in the mirror, that's not you. That thing you see when you look in the mirror is not you. It's an illusion. It's a mirage. A lot of times people think they hate their bodies. We talked about this. I used to think I hated my body, and then I realized that I didn't hate my body. I hated the mirror illusion. That when I was experiencing my body, I loved it. It does what I want it to do. It takes me where I want to go. There's nothing wrong with it. I like the way I feel in it. I'm not in pain. I'm not sick. I feel good. Then I'd look in the mirror and go, I don't like that. Right? Because I'd just focus in on whatever I didn't like. So to first of all get that the mirror is not you, and then get that this is just a vehicle, just like when you get in your car, it's a vehicle. And everything that we see in the world today, all the chaos, ultimately comes down to body identification and the belief in separation. So all the fighting that goes on is basically about that basic thought, that we don't know who we are and that we've identified ourselves with this thing. And then all the labels we have, right? I'm a woman, I'm a man, I'm a Catholic, I'm a Muslim, I'm a this, I'm a that. All of that is bullshit. It's not who you are at all. It's just it's as temporary as this jacket. It's like, how disturbing if I thought I was this jacket. Very stressful. Right? Right. So the split mind is the continual attachment, attaching ourselves. This is the teaching of the Buddha then also. Buddha said, you suffer because you want this to be permanent and stable. And nothing physical is permanent or stable. So that's why you suffer. You suffer because you want the relationship to stay the same forever. You want to be forever 21. You want to know you have exactly this much abundance in your bank account. You want to know that your president is president. You want to know that all of these things that we attach ourselves to that become an extension of who we think we are. So this is a major both doing and undoing of starting to say what you are is spirit. So we're going to start to undo all of this, and it's a continual undoing. It's continually undoing all the time, all the time, all the time, all the time, because you keep picking it up. It's sort of like if you saw that movie with Steve Martin, The Jerk. And that movie, and at the end, he's in the room where he goes, I don't need anything. I don't need anything at all. I can leave here. I don't need anything at all except maybe this ashtray. I just need this ashtray. It's the only thing I need. I don't need anything but this ashtray and this book. Just this ashtray and this book is all that I need until by the end, he's like dragging out lamps and chairs and all this stuff. So that's, Ram Dass. And there's a bunch of documentaries with Ram Dass on Netflix right now, if you have Netflix. There's one of him and Timothy Leary that gives their whole history and then the last years of their life, and then there's one, like a half-hour documentary of Ram Dass. But years ago, the religious science church I was in Los Angeles drove as a group down to Huntington Beach Church, where Peggy Bassett was still alive at that time. This was in the 80s. This was like 1988 or 89 or something like that. And Ram Dass was speaking there, and he was so funny. He was so great. But I remember him talking about, and I want you to just sort of have this in your pocket, just this vision of how we do things. And he was talking about how he got in this phase where he was letting everything go. So he went in through his house or apartment or wherever he was living at the time and just took all these things that he realized, I don't need all this stuff, out to the curb for the garbage person to take them like the next day. So he'd spent hours and hours taking all this stuff out, and then he described how over the next 24 hours, he just slowly kept going out and bringing things back in. Like, well, I guess I probably might need that calculator after all. I better go get that. And this is how the mind is, right? You have that absolute freedom of that spiritual moment, and then accept that one thing, right? Okay. We state again the truth about yourself, the Holy Son of God who rests in you, whose mind has been restored to sanity. You are the Spirit lovingly endowed with all your Father's love and peace and joy. So that's it right there. You already have it. There's no need to seek for joy. There's no need to seek for peace or seek for love or seek for any of these things. All we're doing is undoing the things that obscure that. We're releasing the ideas that obscure. See, even in Scripture where Jesus says, my peace I leave you, my peace I give you. So he's saying, you already have it. In fact, there's this whole section of the Course that talks about the obstacles to peace. And it says that the first obstacle to peace is the desire to get rid of it. Now, you might not think you have the desire to get rid of peace, but look how excited you get about a grievance. That's the desire to get rid of peace. That policing the universe. You know? Get up in the morning and check out and see what that asshole did. That's your desire to get rid of peace. It is the desire to keep chaos and grievances as your blockage to experiencing peace. All right. You are the Spirit which completes himself and share his function as creator. He is with you always as you are with him. Today, we try to bring reality still closer to your mind. Each time you practice, awareness is brought a little nearer at least. Sometimes 1,000 years or more are saved. That's pretty cool. 1,000 years of endless fucking karmic cycles can be saved for just every 5 minutes or so that you stay in the state of, I am spirit. I am spirit. I am not this body. I am not my past. I'm not my accomplishments. Do you know that you're not your accomplishments? Did you know that? You're not your accomplishments. It's easy to say that in a room like this, when you're just sitting here like, I know I'm not my accomplishments, Jacob, but then let somebody poo-poo your accomplishments. Right? Just notice defensiveness. Notice the defensiveness to say, but don't forget I did that. Right? When you say, I am spirit, I am not my resume. I'm not what I own. I'm not the things I've done. And I'm not what happened to me. Do you know that you're not what happened to you? You are not what happened to you. These things are what the Course calls the serial adventures of the body. Like those old serial adventures back in when they would have like the old movies where every week you would go and see a new episode of The Lone Ranger that'd be like 10 minutes long or whatever. So there was episodics. So the episodic, basically, of the body, isn't that what we're focused on every day, is the body. See, Jesus talked about this too, where he said, you know, it's so fabulous. He says, you know, take no thought of what you will eat or what you will drink or what you will wear. I think of almost nothing else. Left to my own devices, that's almost all I ever fucking think of. What am I gonna have for lunch? What am I going to drink? Should I have red wine or white wine? Should I wear this? Is this cute? Will this, if I wear this, then will this body attract other bodies? Will other bodies approve of this body if this body wears this thing? It's just horse shit, right? It's just the ways that we mind fuck ourselves so that we cannot in this moment have the peace and joy of God. So it is the endless body identification. You are the Spirit in whose mind abides the miracle in which all time stands still, the miracle in which a minute spent in using these ideas becomes a time that has no limit and has no end. Give then these minutes willingly and count on him who promised to lay timelessness beside them. Now, him is just your inner being, the Christ consciousness. In Course in Miracles terms, it's Jesus, but that's totally not like mandated. It is just the Holy Spirit's presence within you. It is your infinite self. It goes by many names. A Course in Miracles talks about Christ, and it says, is Jesus the only one? No. The Christ takes millions of faces. But it's understanding that you have a guide, that we're given a guide. A Course in Miracles says, don't kid yourself. You can't do this on your own. You can't. You can't. You need a guide. In fact, the Course says, you're not misguided. You've accepted no guide at all. Right? You're just like, I don't know. Which way's the wind blowing today? Right? If it's blowing this way, we'll just hate and fear. If it's blowing this way, we might forgive a few people. If it's blowing this way, we might have some peace. Right? So the Course says, you need a guide, and you have a guide. Consult your guide. Consult your guide. So he's saying here, if you're willing to give the Holy Spirit these moments, are you? Just moments. That's why it's called the holy instant. It's the instant in which you say, I'm willing to relinquish my way, my little human way. I'm willing to relinquish my way in order to be guided to the way. He will offer all his strength to every little effort that you make. The Holy Spirit will be glad to take 5 minutes of each hour from your hands and carry them around this aching world where pain and misery appear to rule. He will not overlook one open mind that will accept the healing gifts they bring, and he will lay them everywhere he knows they will be welcome, and they will increase in healing power each time someone accepts them as his thoughts and uses them to heal. Thus will each gift to him be multiplied 1,000-fold and tens of thousands more. And when it is returned to you, it will surpass in might the little gift you gave, as much as does the radiance of the sun outshine the tiny gleam a firefly makes in an uncertain moment and goes out. Now, we talked about this the last couple of times, that we no longer think in terms of paying and getting, but we also no longer think in terms of giving and receiving. We think in terms of circulating. Circulating, just like if you're giving, then there's a time when you don't have it anymore. If you're circulating, you never don't have it. If I give blood, I don't have that blood. It's been taken. I've donated it. I've given the blood. Then I'm going to have to make more. The blood that's circulating through my body isn't going anywhere. Right? It's making its journey, but it doesn't leave me. So that's why you want to think in terms of circulating and not in terms even of giving. That everything is circulating. So what he's saying here is every 5 minutes that you spend remembering who you really are, just remembering I am infinite spirit, like my Creator, the child of God. Every 5 minutes that you are holding that thought in your consciousness, the Holy Spirit is taking that thought and circulating it through the universe. And he's saying, and every mind that is open to receive it, receives it, and it comes back to you multiplied, right? But it hasn't ever really left you, right? You've held the thought the whole 5 minutes of, I am spirit. Right? Does that make sense? So it's awesome. Because we're just sitting there thinking I'm spirit. How fucking easy is that? And for that, the world is saved 1,000 years of karmic suffering. Sign me up. Easiest thing I could do today. Begin these happy exercises with the words the Holy Spirit speaks to you and let them echo round the world through him. Spirit am I, a holy Son of God, free of all limits, safe and healed and whole, free to forgive and free to save the world. Ooh, that's pretty good. That we're actually saving the world when we stay in the state of remembering who we actually are. Not saving the planet. The world is not the planet. The planet can't be saved. The planet's going to die. Everything born dies. Everything that appears disappears. You're wasting your time if you're trying to save the planet. It's going to die. Sun's going to go out, stars go out, everything's going to die. Everything physical will go back to the non-physical. When the Course talks about saving the world is in your consciousness. And there is a real world and a false world. So the false world is a world of projection. The false world is the ego's projection of a story onto whatever it sees. So it's a world of fear and separation and differences and conditions. The world as God created it is not ever in flux. It's consistent and constant. It is unchanging. And it doesn't come from projection, it comes from recognition. It's a different kind of seeing. That's why, at a certain point in the Course, one of the things is, above all else, I want to see. Means I want to see instead of project. I want to actually see. There's a difference between sight and vision. Sight is what Jesus called judging according to appearances. You look and you see bad people and good people, things you like and things you don't like. Vision is when you actually see, not with your physical eyes, but you see from inside. It's a sensing, it's a knowing, all right? So I'm going to read that part again. Spirit am I, a holy Son of God, free of all limits, safe and healed and whole, free to forgive and free to save the world. Expressed through you, the Holy Spirit will accept this gift that you received of him, increase its power, and give it back to you. Offer each practice period today gladly to him, and he will speak to you, reminding you that you are spirit, one with him and God, your brothers, and yourself. Listen for his assurance every time you speak the words he offers you today, and let him tell your mind that they are true. Use them against temptation and escape its sorry consequences if you yield to the belief that you are something else. So anytime you're afraid, you are not thinking, I am spirit. You're thinking, I'm a body. Right? If you're afraid, you're thinking, I'm a body. This person's going to leave me. I'm not going to have enough to eat. I'm going to lose this job. The bomb is going to drop. The ozone is going to disappear. All these things mean, in that moment, you are thinking you are something other than what you are. You have become, as we said at the beginning, body identified. And to the extent that you see yourself as body identified, you see yourself as time running out. Just time, tick, 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 tick. All right. Use them against temptation and escape its sorry consequences if you yield to the belief that you are something else. The Holy Spirit gives you peace today. Receive his words and offer them to him. Okay. Now, this is all, I'm doing a lot of Course stuff here in the beginning, just as the foundation for then the real practical stuff. So this is all the really mystical aspects. And then we're going to get into the metaphysical. The mystical is the connection with Source. That's all mysticism is. A mystic is someone who experiences God directly. Understand? It's just knowing your source directly. That's the mystic. Metaphysics is how we now act it out in the world. That's the aspect, really, of the human, really, where you're still, because it's metaphysical. Right? It's sort of the physical, but beyond the physical. It's a different kind of, it's a metaphysical, right? So, this early stuff here, I know, it's deep. The early stuff is deep because we need that foundation before we then go into the metaphysical. So I want to talk about this chapter 21, Reason and Perception, in section 8, the last unanswered question. Do you not see that all your misery comes from the strange belief that you are powerless? Ta-da! See, you probably thought there were lots of reasons why you were miserable. All your misery comes from the strange belief that you are powerless. Being helpless is the cost of the belief in sin. No one believes that the Son of God is powerless, and those who see themselves as helpless must believe they are not the Son of God. So that's why I'm reading this, is because it goes right in line with our lesson for today. I am spirit. So if you see yourself as powerless, you've once again misidentified yourself, because you know that the Son of God can't be powerless. So if you think you're powerless, you cannot see yourself as a child or extension of God in that moment, right? Makes sense. But now here's where it gets fucking insidious. If that were just it, that would be enough, but here we go. Those who see themselves as helpless must believe that they are not the Son of God. What can they be except his enemy? And what can they do but envy him his power, and by their envy make themselves afraid of it? So basically, now I'm going to give you a big concept. It's very simple. These concepts are big and super fucking simple. But let's remember, the Course says simplicity is very difficult for twisted minds. Complexity is of the ego. The concept, the truth, is so simple in this, which is that we have, in this belief in separation, made ourselves enemy to God. We've made ourselves enemy to God. I mean, that's all he's really saying here, is you realize if you are not an extension of God, and you can't believe you're an extension of God if you feel powerless, then to some degree you must think that God is your enemy. Because it's something apart from you that's doing shit. That's why you're not happy. That's why you feel powerless. Now, this is so big in everything that we're studying this year. The recognition that there's a line in the Course that says, fear of the will of God is one of the strangest beliefs the human mind has ever made. Fear of the will of God is one of the strangest beliefs the human mind has ever made. So this is why we talked about this last month, and I'm going to say it probably every month when I come here, that we are no longer at a place where we surrender to God's will ever for any reason. Because if you are surrendering, you're at war. You understand that? You have to understand the concept. If you're surrendering, it's because you've lost a war. And who would you be at war with but an enemy? I surrender to you, God, because you've beaten me, and I'll just give in to your horrible, fucked up will that I wear brown and serve and wash the feet of the poor in India. Okay? Because that's what the ego mind has made of God. That the will of God is that you suffer. The will of God is, we just went through a holiday, so ridiculous, where the religious belief is that God is appeased by blood sacrifice. Why would you surrender to that fucking insane God? Who would surrender to that? Who would say, I want the will of God, when God said, you know my favorite son of all? Watch what I do to him. And I love him the most. So who then would say, oh, sign me up for your will too? Right? But we have all these half-assed religious stories that then make you'd be insane to want the will of God. But then if you get real spiritual, then you think, well, I guess I should surrender to the will of God, knowing that it's not going to be joyful, right? But that's the God you've made up, the Course says. That has nothing to do with God. That's the God of what the Course calls the ego's religions. It has nothing to do with God at all. That God, the Course talks over and over again about how God requires no sacrifice from you whatsoever except the sacrifice of fear. You just have to be willing to let go of fear. But no other sacrifice is required. So you have to start to realize that. And all through the Course, it says over and over and over again, God's will for you is perfect happiness. Now, let's take that word perfect and change it to what that really means and what I want to present to you as a huge concept for us to be going through this year, which is unconditional. God's will for you is unconditional happiness. Unconditional, what's unconditional happiness? Unconditional joy and happiness means happy for no reason. I'm happy and joyous for no reason. I'm peaceful for no reason. Because if you have a reason, you're fucked. Because reasons change. Whatever's the thing, I'm happy because of this, this can change. I'm happy because of my relationship. Well, your relationship can end right now. They could be packing at home right now, sneaking out with your life savings, and secretly already have 2 other spouses. Has nobody seen Dateline? Okay? I'm happy because my body is healthy and well. You'd be hit by a car tomorrow. Everything that this is my reason for joy, my reason for peace, my reason for happiness can disappear. So what we want is unconditional happiness, happy for no reason. I enjoy these things. I enjoy my relation. I enjoy this. I enjoy all these things. But they are not the reason. What I want is unconditional happiness. So the Course is basically saying over and over again, God's will for you is unconditional happiness. So now what you do instead of surrendering to God's will is you eagerly align with God's will because you know it's better than yours. It's not equal to yours. It's better than yours. So much better than yours. Terry Cole Whitaker, who, was where many of us started back in the day, I remember her saying in one class, this was probably the end of 3rd or 4th marriage or something like that, and she talked about it, she said, listen, plenty of people prayed to get me, got me, and wished they hadn't. Do you understand what that means? That idea that our will is, oh, I want to marry that guy, then I'm going to be happy, da-da-da-da-da. That our will is imperfect, and it's conditional, and it's often wrong. Because we think if I achieve this, if I get this, if I accomplish this, I'll be peaceful and happy. Now, I don't know how many people, I watch TV so you don't have to. And I mean a lot of it. So I watched the Gary Shandling, the Zen Diaries of Gary Shandling on, I think it was on HBO. 4.5 fucking hours. Split up into 2 nights. 4.5 hours of what could have been an hour easily with a good editor. The point, and the title is accurate. It was taken a lot from his diaries. So there were, they even showed where he was writing these things in his diary. And it was really, and because he'd been in show business for so long and because he was really obsessed with, and it so ties into all of this, the perfect timing, is he really got into stand-up, to doing stand-up, because he felt like that was how he would find himself. That by expressing himself on stage and through his art, that he would find himself. And kind of early on, and he had a lot of success early on. And kind of early on, he discovered Zen Buddhism and meditation. So during a lot of that, he was probably doing Zen meditation for maybe 30 years or something like that, of daily, very serious meditation and going on spiritual retreats and all of these things, and all of this writing in his journal. And then pretty near the end of his life, and he died suddenly of a heart attack. So he wasn't expected to die, but he had just previous to that, within a year or 2 before that, thought he was going to die because he was very ill, and he did have to go in and have a dangerous surgery and all of this stuff. So he had gone through an experience of starting to sort of prepare himself to die. I'll just give you a little bit of the neurotic background if you're not that familiar with Gary Shandling. But one of the stories that he tells about his mother, because his brother, I think, had cystic fibrosis and died when his older brother, when they were still children. And he was really, because of the way their family was and because of the time it was and what people did and the psychology of things, his parents never addressed it ever. And so, in fact, no one even ever really said right to his face, your brother died. He just had to know that he'd gone to the hospital and didn't come back, and then they didn't let him go to the funeral. So he had no closure at all. So they didn't let him go because it's too upsetting and you shouldn't go and da-da-da-da, and then they never spoke about it. But what his mother did do was just grabbed onto him then for the rest of his life. Because she had lost this first son, then all she came from was the fear of losing my only last son. And so she just totally dominated him with this very smothering love. In fact, and this is the joke that I'm leading up to, is where he said, you know, my mother now is at the point where she's really just hounding me about how she wants grandchildren. She just doesn't want me to have them with another woman. So, kind of disturbing. And this became the thing that he never recovered from, basically. So he never, he never really had a real relationship other than with this one woman that was just a couple of years, and that was really it. And then he broke up with, he was engaged to her, and then he broke up with her. In fact, she was the woman who played his girlfriend on the Larry Sanders Show. And he actually got engaged to her, and this was what he did, was he said to her, well, so she was trying to get a date to when they were getting married, and he said, I'm building this beautiful new house. When the house is finished, I want us to move in as man and wife. So he made sure the house was never going to be finished. They would talk about how you would come over and it'd look all great, and then you'd come over the next week and go, wasn't the chimney over there last week? And now it's over, how's this taking? So it kept delaying until finally he just broke up with her, and then he had her fired from the show the next week. Right? So he could do all these really shitty things based on this wound that never healed. Now, and the point of it is he had a very serious, this is why when people talk all the time, and I shouldn't be saying this, so of course I will. It was when people are because it's so trendy now, meditation. And meditation, meditation, and meditation. And I just know scads of people who have the most serious meditation practice you can imagine, who are the most raging fucking assholes I have ever met in my life. So I really am not a big meditation fan. In fact, Louise Hay, very near the end of her life, was asked, do you meditate? And she said, no, I haven't meditated in years. And she was one of the most peaceful, sane, Zen people you'd ever meet. So it's not about your practice. That's just a new, trendy thing. Meditation's been around for millennia, but it's just a new, trendy thing for people to do so that on Instagram, all their pictures are... Right? It doesn't mean anything. You can be a great meditator, and it's wonderful while you're meditating. Right? It does all those things it's supposed to do. It lowers your blood pressure, and it gives you peace, and da-da-da-da. And then people get up from the mat, and within 20 minutes, they're right back to judging, criticizing, fearing, and worrying. So it's really not about your practice, because the essence of that was, to me, when you look from that place of understanding, is that he thought that stand-up is how he was going to figure out who he was. So he did therapy, and he did Zen, and he did all these things, and that through doing stand-up, he would find out who he was. But here's the thing. I want you to get this. This is the big lie of the world. And this has to do with self-improvement and self-love as well. The self that you're trying to love and find out who it is a fictional character. You made it up. It doesn't exist. It's a fictional, mythological character. You're not going to find yourself through stand-up because you're trying to find a personality that is not you. Bill Thetford, who was the co-scribe of the course, and he and Helen were both psychologists, and that's how they basically got together, was he hired her to assist him in these projects, but he had already been a therapist for years. I mean, he was very serious. He was a New York, 1960s, buttoned-down psychologist, psychotherapist, who had projects with the CIA and stuff. So like, these were people who took their degrees and things very seriously. And he had, for years, like, his main thrust and focus was and I don't know what it was, but it was something I had not heard of before that's not really that common now, was a kind of personality test that figured out who you were based on your personality. And he'd spent, like, enormous amounts of time and funding in doing all this, only to find out how useless all of that is, and it doesn't mean a fucking thing. And the same thing is true if you watch that, the documentary with Timothy Leary and Ram Dass is the same basic kind of thing, is the studying, I think, of Timothy Leary into personalities and things, and the realization that you are not that personality at all, that you're studying something that doesn't mean anything or change anything or have anything to do with anything at all. And that when we're looking at this wound, you start to recognize that what was wounded is a mythical self. But people spend their whole lives trying to heal a self that doesn't exist. So, to me, when I watch that, and you know, there's only a couple of stories in the world anyhow, but most of them that are kind of this unhealed story, where people don't really ever wake up, is kind of the same basic story, which is why, for so many people, the greatest movie in history is Citizen Kane, because that's the main story of life, which is that he goes through all these things, and at the end it's Rosebud, right? It all goes back to, here he is, this old fucking man who's achieved all his dreams and become famous and, you know, saw himself as this great powerful person and da-da-da-da, and what it all came down to was, Mommy didn't want me. Mommy gave me away. And the representation of that is that sled, because that's the day. I was riding my sled named Rosebud that day, right? Those were his dying words, Rosebud. Like, still I'm pissed. Rosebud. Right? That's the story over and over. You can watch most of these movies where someone is unhealed, and it's that same thing going back to that whatever that wound was. And the Course in Miracles talks about that endlessly, of trying to heal the past and the present with shadow figures from the past. So Gary Shandling is still, my brother died, they never told me, I didn't have closure, my mother suffocates me, I've done everything to find out who I am. I'm not the brother who didn't die, who am I? So he spent his whole life trying to figure out who the fuck he was, studying a self that's made up. Even with all this deep, deep Zen training, which is all about let go of your thoughts, let go of identification, let go, going to retreats, doing all this stuff for years. And he would write down in the book about letting go, letting go, letting go. Now, I'm going to just give you a real fucking another brilliantly deep, deep fucking thing. Knowing to let go is not letting go. You understand the simplicity of that? Knowing to let go is not letting go. Letting go is letting go. Writing in your journal for 30 fucking years, I need to let go, is not letting go. Letting go is letting go. So you can come to groups like this for 65 years and fill your journal with everything Jacob said. But if you're not actually doing it right, it's listen, learn, and do. The recognition of, I am not this description I'm giving all the time. I'm something infinite. Do you know that you're infinite? To experience yourself as infinite. This is what got, you know, even Timothy Leary and Ram Dass, like the takeoff point from them both being in that therapeutic model was when they took the drugs that gave them an experience of the infinite. But the problem, we all know this, the problem with drugs is it's like an elevator. It's like a glass elevator that takes you up to the penthouse, but you can't get out. It just shows you. So you're there looking for as long as the drug lasts. And then it takes you right back down to where you were before and sometimes lower. Because now you have the pain of knowing what you're missing. So the spiritual journey then is the recognition that you can have that just by choosing it. You don't have to work towards it. It's not about if I meditate. Fucking Gary Shandling meditated every day for 30 fucking years, did nothing for him. I would say it relieved his stress, but he still died of a fucking massive heart attack. I don't even think it really alleviated his stress that much. That in an instant, you can just know there's nowhere to go and nothing to do. I'm spirit now. I'm not spirit after I drop this fucking body. I'm spirit now. Right now, in this moment, I'm infinite spirit. I have more TV to talk about, too. So don't worry. Okay, so. Yet hate must have a target. There can be no faith in sin without an enemy. Who that believes in sin would dare believe that he has no enemy? Could he admit that no one made him powerless? Reason would surely bid him seek no longer what is not there to find, yet first he must be willing to perceive a world where it is not. It is not necessary that he understand how he can see it, nor should he try, for if he focuses on what he cannot understand, he will but emphasize his helplessness and let sin tell him that his enemy must be himself. But let him only ask himself these questions, which he must decide to have it done for him. So he's going to give us 4 questions to ask ourselves. And you must be ruthlessly honest with yourself in these 4 questions. And what he's saying basically is this. You are going to register one of 2 worlds. And the vision of one world costs you the vision of the other. There is this world of separation, fear, and sin, which, as we've discussed, is a projection of mind, of the stories we've been raised with, the story of whatever, many stories. We have many stories that make up our individual projected world, whatever that is. My parents didn't give me closure, my brother died, now I'm their last hope. That's just one tiny little projection of the Gary Shandling world. And he is a perfect example of conditional happiness and how it didn't make him happy. Every one of his dreams came true. He basically used metaphysics without knowing he was doing it by writing down all his goals. And as they kept coming true, they kept not making him happy for very long. Right? I want to be on The Tonight Show. I want to host The Tonight Show. I want to have my own show. I want to da-da-da. And it all kept happening because metaphysically, that's how it works. But metaphysics without this foundation is useless. Lots of people that you would consider evil have used metaphysics. Hitler was a master metaphysician and studied metaphysics a lot in how to master the material realm. Right? So metaphysics without the wisdom of connection to source, Einstein said, with the splitting of the atom, everything has changed except our mode of thinking, and so we hurl ourselves toward unparalleled catastrophe. A metaphysical power in the mind of a human is a horrible thing. In the hands of a mystic is a wonderful thing. When you know, I am spirit, I am Christ, I'm one with God, that's when you use your metaphysics, not before that, right? So, are you ready for the 4 questions? 4 questions. Question number 1, do I desire a world I rule instead of one that rules me? 2, do I desire a world where I am powerful instead of helpless? 3, do I desire a world... Now, here he's going to start to get you. Are you ready? Got to be ready for this. He's starting to dig at you. Do I desire a world in which I have no enemies and cannot sin? And number 4, and do I want to see what I denied because it is the truth? You may You may already have answered the first 3 questions, but not yet the last, for this one will still seem fearful and unlike the others. Yet reason would assure you they're all the same. We said this year would emphasize the sameness of things that are the same. The final question, which is indeed the last you need decide, still seems to hold a threat the rest have lost for you. And this imagined difference attests to your belief that truth may be the enemy that you may yet find. Here, then, would seem to be the last remaining hope of finding sin and not accepting power. So, sin is just error, basically. So, when you're looking for sin, the ego is always looking for guilt. Now, the 2 dominant sort of vibrations of Abraham Hicks's emotional scale that are at the bottom of the scale are, the very bottom is depression, and then up from that is anger. Most human beings are spending the majority of their time bouncing back and forth between depression and anger. They are the same thing. They are attack. Depression is self-attack. So it's attacking the self. Anger actually feels better because it projects the attack outward. Now, let me tell you something that I've noticed politically in the world, in our country in general, is there's so many people that I know are Democrats and liberals. And when Obama was the president, they loved everything that was happening in terms of what he was doing. And so many of them were personally very depressed. Very happy about what was happening, depressed. A lot of times they didn't even know they were depressed, but if you had lunch with them, you fucking knew. Which was, so perfect. It was a perfect Course in Miracles lesson of saying that even when the world's doing what you want it to do, you're not happy. Like, I can't even tell you, I know more gay people who committed suicide either deliberately or by drug overdoses after gay marriage was legalized, when you would have thought they would have been the happiest of all. But that ego attacked inward. So, well, this is all I'm going to hear. I'm more accepted. I have more freedom. Self-attack. When Donald Trump became president, there was a huge excitement, because there's an excitement about rage and anger. So they took all that and projected it outward. First, I'm the enemy. I'm the one that can't be happy. There's something wrong with me. Oh, now we have an enemy. Good. It feels better to hate him and them. Those people. That's why it is actually higher on the vibrational scale, but it's the same basic stupid move. So the move that most people stay in is depression, anger, depression, anger, depression, anger, depression, anger, and then every now and then excitement over, I might be getting what I want soon. Back down, depression, anger, depression, anger. Oh, I think something goes out. Depression, anger, depression, anger, depression, anger. Right? So it's just recognizing these things. That getting what you want. So again, like with Gary Shandling, continually achieving what he wanted to achieve and never any happier. And even being aware, I need to let go. And not until the end when he really started to let go. Because even with all this Zen meditation and stuff, he would hold a grudge for years. Bob Saget, who was one of his dearest friends, who was there with him at the beginning when he first hosted The Tonight Show, and he went backstage and collapsed into Bob's arms, sobbing and crying because he'd achieved his dream. So it was like there was the relief of I've achieved it, and then the fear of now what? Because I've already done this at this point, I'm so young, and now what am I going to do? When Gary Shandling broke up with his agent and manager, who he ended up suing and having a very acrimonious, very public lawsuit that went on for years, he thought, and Bob Saget was friends with this guy too, Brad Gray, because Bob Saget did not cut Brad Gray out of his life, Gary Shandling cut Bob Saget out of his life and didn't speak to him for 20 years, which devastated Bob Saget. And Bob Saget said, I couldn't stopped talking to Brad Gray. He hadn't done anything to me. I wasn't even sure if he'd done anything really to Gary. And I was the godparent to Brad Gray's children, and he was the godparent to mine. He was like family to me. But because I wouldn't take Gary's side with all his Zen meditation every day, that's what I'm saying. Meditating doesn't make you not an asshole. It just doesn't. He held a grudge for 20 fucking years. Then they ran into each other somewhere, and Bob Saget was crying and said, Gary, I can't not have you in my life. This is horrible. And Gary said, oh, okay. So he gave him his phone number, and he would never call him back. Right? So it wasn't until the very, very end of Gary's life where he actually started to let go, probably the last 6 months or a year or something like that. We actually did start to let go, not just to write down letting go, but to actually let go, to actually start to recognize, to some degree anyhow, of all of this has been bullshit. All this money and all this fame and all these people who, because there were people adored him, and then they talked about like his difficulty in really accepting the love. So it wasn't even trying to get love. The love was already there. He couldn't let it in. Because in order to let love in, you have to let the fuck go. The ego's idea of not being helpless is to take control. But to spirit, being powerful is giving up control. How can you give up control? By aligning with the powerful, fabulous, happy, joyous, sexy will of God. That's how when you start thinking about it. I align with the happy, joyous, prosperous, healthy, sexy will of God. I eagerly get up every morning and I can't wait to fucking align with the glorious, happy, sexy will of God. Last time I had sex, I thought, I'm fucking you for God. Because I do everything for God now. It's all for God. It's a win-win. All right. Forget not that the choice of sin or truth, helplessness or power is the choice of whether to attack or heal. For healing comes of power and attack of helplessness. Whom you attack, you cannot want to heal. This is a course in cause and not effect. Consider carefully your answer to that last question you have left unanswered still, and let your reason tell you that it must be answered and is answered in the other three. And then it will be clear to you that as you look on the effects of sin in any form, all you need do is simply ask yourself, is this what I would see? Do I want this? Right? So when you look at the world of attack, differences, separation, pain, things that you think need to be different, then you have to ask yourself this question, is this what I would see? Do I want this? Because I'm choosing what I'm going to focus on and what I'm going to see. Do I want this? Because it's a projection. Or do I want to see with vision which looks beyond all this? That's the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is that, Krishna comes and shows Arjuna that all of this is meaningless. He shows him the war and the battlefield and the bodies that are dropping and how the spirit, they rise just back up again in another body. That you are not a body, that what happens to the body is temporary and ultimately meaningless. So if you are looking at the world and a world of bodies and horrified by it, then you are projecting a story that that's who people are, that that's what things are, that you're not seeing with vision. You're judging by appearances. The appearance of the physical instead of inner vision. That's all Gary Shandling is doing, right? He's looking at bodies and saying, that person betrayed me because they didn't take my side and come with me and blah, 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 nah, 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 nah. But he never stopped to say, do I want this? Do I want this world of sin and separation and attack and deprivation and powerlessness, or do I want the world of peace and joy and love that God created, which requires me to stop writing down let go and actually let go? To shred the evidence. You know your evidence? You know your file. You have a file. You have many files. To shred the fucking evidence. Not just to release the hostages, but to dismantle the jail. If you have a jail, it's so tempting to just come into my parlor, said the jailer to the fly, right? You just, let's just dismantle, what am I doing with this jail of all the guilty people I see all the time? And make my lists about them and talk together about them and join groups about them. Hey, we all hate the same things. Let's get together. I'm against that. Are you against that? Right? What are we going to push against today? This is your one decision. This the condition for what occurs. It is irrelevant to how it happens, but not to why. You have control of this. And if you choose to see a world without an enemy in which you are not helpless, the means to see it will be given you. So what he's saying is, you don't have to do it. If it's what you really want, that's why he's saying you have to ask the questions and answer them honestly. Because if you do say, I do want to see a world of sinlessness and peace and joy, he's saying, if you really desire that, the means to see it will be given you. But it can't be lip service. There are lots of people who think and say that they're all about love. And what the world needs is love. What we really need is love. The problem is that we just really need love. I'm focused on love. I'm one of the love people. And if you talk to them, you realize all they talk about is the lack of love. They say they want love, but they're policing lack of love. They say love is the answer, but they're tracking who is loveless. We need to make those people love. You know, so-and-so isn't loving. You're not about love at all. You're about lack of love. Course in Miracles says, when you want only love, you will see nothing else. You'll stop seeing people who don't want love. You'll just see people who are afraid. And then you'll love them. You'll say, those people are kooks. Let's love the kooks. Because you know you're a kook, right? You know you're a kook. Anyone here not aware you're a kook? Anybody didn't know you're a kook? So you love the other kooks. All right. Now, let's skip down here and then we'll end this and move on. Elusive happiness, or happiness in changing form that shifts with time and space, is an illusion that has no meaning. Happiness must be constant because it is attained by giving up the wish for the inconstant. Joy cannot be perceived except through constant vision. So that's all we've been talking about. Is realizing God's world is constant. So when we're focused on that reality, our joy and peace is constant. I'm not talking about your mood. You may have moods that come and go. But your inner joy, your inner peace, your inner happiness is unchanging because you keep identifying yourself as spirit, other people as spirit, the world as essentially a spirit world. Okay? So, all right, now we can start the class. I'm not even fucking kidding. I know you wish I was, but I'm not. So, now, interestingly, then, of course, because of how everything dovetails, when you're being led by the Spirit, you know, which I am being led by the Spirit, and, you know, that's our deal, is to be led by Spirit. So, always everything dovetails. So once you get on a frequency, there's nothing else on that frequency. When you turn on channel 4, you're not seeing channel 6 shows. You get that? Have you ever noticed, like, when people are angry, there's no new angry words? Everyone says the same thing. It's all the same, because that's the only thing they show on that channel. The anger frequency is all you're going to get is the same things that have been said since time began. So it's recognizing what frequency you're on. The receptive mode We've talked before about the receptive mode. Like when Abraham talks about the receptive mode, the way they describe it, it's like receiving stuff. You know, like I'm getting in the receptive mode so that prosperity can come. I'm getting in the receptive mode so that my mate will come. I'm getting in the receptive mode. That's not what the receptive mode is. The receptive mode is receiving source's signal. The receptive mode is you like a receiver, like a radio receiver, right? The source signal is going out. The Course in Miracles says the call to joy is so strong that the ego literally dissolves at its sound. So when you decide, I'm going to tune into the frequency of joy, then that's all that's going to be on that frequency, on that bandwidth. That's all you will register at that bandwidth. So you want to focus on, more than anything else, your connection to Source, your connection to God. That's why the Course in Miracles says that's the only problem there is. In fact, most true spiritual paths say this, that the only problem, he says, you think you have many different problems, but you have only one problem, and that is that you feel disconnected from Source. You feel disconnected from God. That is your only problem. It's the only problem in humanity ever, is a sense of disconnection from God. Therefore, there's only one answer. Isn't that, don't you love the simplicity? Right? There's only one problem, a sense of disconnection from Source. There's only one answer, that is the recognition that you're connected to Source. Duh. That's everything. Then no matter what's happening, the answer is reconnect with Source. See, but you can't reconnect to Source because you were never disconnected. So really, you have to keep remembering it's awareness. That it's not, oh, I've disconnected from Source and I need to reconnect with Source. No, you were never disconnected. You just forgot you were connected. So it's just remembering. It's just awareness. That's why, A Course in Miracles, people who want to get enlightened, that's a great way to join a cult. People start talking about enlightenment, you're almost always in a cult. Let me just tell you. There's no such thing really as enlightenment. A Course in Miracles says enlightenment is not a change at all, it's just a recognition. It's just recognizing. It's not a shift, it's just a recognition of what's always been. That's all. It's just, oh, and what is that recognition? I'm spirit, I'm one with God. That's enlightenment. I'm enlightened. Then you can lose it in 5 minutes. Because you look up and the cat just shit on the coffee table. And in that moment, you forgot that you were one with God and you were spirit and you thought you had stuff that you had to protect. Oh, I went right back into, I was a human and I had shit and I needed now. This is why we can't have anything nice. So you were enlightened and then you were just, boom, right back down. It's like, did you ever see that movie, Being John Malkovich? Where they go in and they're in his brain and then they just get hurled out onto the street. Like, it's like that. It's like you're all enlightened and it's all one, and it's all peace, and it's all bliss, and then just whatever, and then you're just poof, right down there. I'm dirt. I'm made of dirt, ashes to ashes, and dust to dust, and I got to get my stuff and keep it under control. And so it's a continual recognition that enlightenment isn't something that happened and you're just there. Here's the thing. Now, this is a big part of what I wanted to tell you today, too. It doesn't matter how advanced or high you are, you can backslide at any moment. Anyone can backslide at any moment. I don't care if you're the fucking Dalai Lama or the Pope or Jesus or anyone else, you can backslide at any given moment. That's why it takes consistency and it takes effort. People hate that this takes people would rather climb the Himalayas with a fucking just 2 bottles of water, like in a loincloth, right? And just work like a fucking dog, you know, and practically die getting to some cave where they think some guru is being. They would rather do that than say, every morning for the rest of your life, you're going to have to clean up your vibration and take charge of your mind. People are like, it's too fucking hard. I'm tired of this. I just want to think whatever I want to think and feel whatever I want to feel, and I don't want to have to watch my thoughts anymore. Right? And it takes effort. And you think, oh, it's too much work. It's too much work to kind of, it's too much work, it's too much work. And it's so tired. I'm tired of doing it. I'm tired of it. But then what people forget is how debilitating and fucking exhausting it is to be depressed and angry every goddamn day. How much effort it takes to hold on to a grudge for 20 years, as Gary Shandling did. It takes energy to be pissed all the time, to hate yourself, to feel guilty. It takes an enormous amount of energy. And if somebody says, well, if you would just spend 5 minutes in the morning doing affirmations out loud, fuck you. I did it 2 days in a row and nothing changed. Right? Well, you're going to have to do it every day for the rest of your fucking life, just like you're going to have to brush your teeth every day for the rest of your life. It's that kind of consistency. It's not like, I brushed my teeth so good this morning, I'm never going to have to do it again. You wouldn't then, I brushed my teeth 3 days this week. Fuck these fucking teeth. Right? But we'll do something out here that's just a lot of effort and stuff like that. Anything but control my own mind, right? So just be careful of backsliding. I mean, it's fascinating to me, having done this as long as I have and, been teaching for like so many years, is oftentimes the people who have had the greatest demonstrations are the ones who backslide the worst. People who've gone through periods of time of like great abundance and health and relationships, and they lost the weight and they got a great job and they're really happy, and then one thing, they get one story going, and then they end up back worse off than they were before they ever began. But they keep validating the story. So you have to be careful of watching where I've started to believe a story. I've started to believe a story about separation and special circumstances. This is a special circumstance, you don't understand. My sister really needs this, but my case is more complicated. Right? We always think, oh, our situation is, you don't understand, Jacob. My situation is different. So just watch that backslide, because here's the word I'm going to present you with today. Vigilance. Can you be vigilant? Now, here's what, so the Course in Miracles says, just be vigilant for God, for Source. Just be vigilant for your connection to Source. That's it. All we're ever doing here is tending our vibration by being vigilant to our connection to Source. Just be vigilant for that, because here's what the Course says, and this is where he gets us again, and it really is about that same two worlds thing again, where he says, something to the effect of, the alertness of the ego to the errors of other egos is not the kind of vigilance the Holy Spirit would have you maintain. You get that? The alertness of the ego to the errors of other egos is not the kind of vigilance the Holy Spirit would have you maintain. So notice how you're vigilant for where someone got it wrong. Notice how you have that all in your back pocket in order to enlighten other people. Right? Oh, I need to inform my family because they're ignorant. They're Republicans and they don't understand. So I need to pull out of my pocket all the errors and horrors of Donald Trump and educate them about them. And the Holy Spirit says, you're fucking insane, you're miserable, you're doing this to yourself, it's not affecting the world or Donald Trump at all, it's just making you miserable and helping you to believe in separation and pain and costing you the peace of God that you say you want. Your vigilance is not for what other people are doing or even for your own errors. Your vigilance is connection to Source. Am I vigilant about maintaining my connection to Source? All right. So now let's go into The Art of Life by Ernest Holmes. So we start to move into, and he opens the book. Now this is from 1948. So just goes to show you. And also, I've said this, been saying this for years, but the world is no worse than it's ever been. In most ways, it's better than it's ever been. But we get whatever particular team you're on. And see, this is the thing. See, I have no team whatsoever, and I have no tribal thinking at all. I have no tribal thinking in terms of being gay, or a white person, or a man, or a particular political party, or anything like that. I don't see any of that as teams. I'm not on any particular team. There are things that I practice and do, but I'm not identified by any of that. How can I be? I'm spirit. Most hashtags are bullshit. I remember seeing all these, and you still see this, hashtag love wins. Hashtag fuck you, it doesn't. Love does not win because love is not at war. Love does not win because love is not in competition with anything. Therefore, it cannot win. If love wins, then love can lose. So whatever love won today, it can lose tomorrow. If love won with this administration, then it can lose with the next administration. But love does not win because it's not in contention with anything. It actually has no opposite. The introduction of the Course says love has no opposite. It only has the illusion of an opposite. But what is all-encompassing can have no opposite. Therefore, the Course can be summed up very simply in this way. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. So there's a line in the Course that says, love does not conquer anything, but it does set all things right. So it's not conquering anything. When we say love conquers all, it does not conquer anything. It is not at war with anything. Love abides. We have to notice within ourselves how much we love to be at war with something. The war against your fat, the war against your debt, the war against your, the war against your, the war against, the war against, the war against. That's why when you align instead of surrender, if you're surrendering, you're at war. Strategy is a military word. If you have a strategy, you're at war with something. You don't need a strategy, okay? You don't need a strategy or a plan because God has a plan. Only God's plan for salvation will work, A Course in Miracles says. Now listen how he opens this book. The world is crying out for God. Lost in the canyons of disillusionment, where the trail runs out and stops against granite barriers that wall us in, we cry, why hast thou forsaken me? When war devastates the land and tremblingly we stand at the mouth of hell, listening to the screaming of airplanes, the wails of the wounded, and the terror of headlines, we cry, why hast thou forsaken me, right? We're talking World War II and all this, right? I've said for years, all you have to remember is when people go, oh, it's so bad now, it's da-da-da-da-da. Cain killed Abel. 4 people on the planet, and 2 of them can't get along. I mean, it's not a historical, real story, but you get the idea. It's always been this way. It's always been this way. Cain killed Abel. We get this in Genesis. This is right at the very beginning of like, you people just cannot fucking get along. Never could, never will. It's not even really the goal. The goal is inner peace. The answer to our need lies not in God's willingness, but in our will to accept, in our ability through faith to recognize the divine presence as the great reality of life. The power of God within us is like a sleeping giant which must be awakened that it may spring into action. What is the secret longing of your heart? If you saw an advertisement that read, you can learn how to be well, happy, and successful. You can learn how to influence people, how to create your own destiny. Would this have a greater attraction for you than an advertisement which read, you can learn how to help others? Or would you even be more intrigued by this advertisement? Do you wish to become one of the molders of human destiny? So he starts to, so the purpose of metaphysics and things like these books is then, okay, so now from that standpoint of my first thing every day is my connection to source, now how do I co-create my own reality from that foundation? How do I create every day my own reality from that foundation of connection with source? Of knowing I am spirit, I am powerful, I am love, I am peace, I am joy, I am aligning myself with God's fabulous, joyous, healthy, sexy will. Then metaphysics then just gives you the blueprint of how you do that. How you change your thoughts, how you line up with source, how you begin to use your imagination and use your word as Jesus did. Right? So shall my word be that goes out before me. It shall not return unto me void. It shall accomplish the thing whereunto I sent it. My word will do what I say it will do. My word of prosperity, my love of forgiveness, my love of health, my love of wholeness, my word of companionship. All of these words will be the demonstration of that consciousness, that God consciousness, not my own consciousness, but my own individualized God consciousness. A world in which I am not powerless. I am actually choosing. Right? And the Course goes right along with that. It says, you have to have a goal. You have to decide. I've decided. I've decided. This is the step out of victimhood. Deciding. Making a decision. Even just to say, I've decided to be happy. Say that. I've decided to be happy. That's power. Because most people hope they'll be happy. Hope is a hateful bitch. Hope has no place in New Thought. Hope is for people who do not understand how the universe operates. We are operating under divine laws. So I use the same example all the time because it's so clear. I don't wake up in the morning and go, I hope gravity holds me down on the earth today. I understand how gravity works. It's a law. So when you understand how the law works, you don't have hope anymore. You don't say, I hope I'll be happy. You say, I've decided to be happy. I've made the choice to be happy, and I have to keep choosing it all the time. I keep choosing happiness, not wishing for it. I choose happiness. I've decided to be happy. Then the mind is your servant. When you're training your mind is your servant. So the mind will then begin gathering evidence of why you should be happy. Just bring to you, it's like a dog that just goes, you know? Because, of course, America talks about how the ego is like a scavenger dog, and it goes out and drags back the rotting bones of the evidence of guilt and sin in the world. Right? So we want a nice happy dog that's going to go out and get the evidence of why you should be happy. So many wonderful things to be happy about, that you're just here, that you're alive, that you have consciousness, that you can be aware of things. You can just start from there and then just let it ripple out, ripple out, ripple out. I'm happy because I'm one with God. Happy because I'm one with all of life. All right. Then we go to chapter 4 of The Art of Life. The one who learns how to control his thinking learns how to control his destiny. We are bound by our own thought world. Nothing can save us but ourselves. The individual who will learn how to consciously change his thinking processes can remold his destiny. Now, this sentence is killer. Everything I'm teaching you today that's deeply profound is so fucking simple that I hope that you will remember it just because it's so fucking simple. Negative forces operating in our lives will die a natural death if we will practice the habit of being disinterested in them. I want you to think of this as divine disinterest. I have a divine disinterest in the negative forces in the world. I have a divine disinterest in my problems. Stop being fucking fascinated by your problem. Stop being fucking fascinated by your wound. It's not that fascinating. Ask your friends. I have a divine disinterest in my problems. And there's I did a bunch of talks last month about how the Course in Miracles talks about how let me recognize the problem so that it can be solved, because most of the times what we think the problem is not the problem, since the only problem is our sense of separation from God. And then later on, another lesson is, let me recognize that all my problems have been solved. But see, the mind as we experience it, most of us, is addicted to thinking and addicted to fixing. The mind that is addicted to fixing is always looking for problems to fix. Have you noticed how you've never solved all your problems? Because have you noticed how then more just keep coming? Like they just back up? Because that's what you're interested in. I'm interested in my problems and I'm fixing. And actually, I'm super fucking clever about fixing problems. I feel like it's a gift. Therefore, I really feel like I have to give my gift. It wouldn't be fair for me to withhold my gift of fixing problems. So I get up early every day and start thinking about problems and fixing them. And usually, it mostly is fixing other people. It usually is, I've seen what's wrong with you. If you would just, oh God. It's like that greeting card that I always talk about, where on the outside, the woman is like a 1950s sort of drawing. She's got the gloved hand and she's dreamily looking off in this romantic love where it says, thinking of you. And then you open it up and it says, wish you would change. That's the ego's idea of relationship. You're such a diamond in the rough. You're a nice fixer-upper. You have so much potential. Right? So this idea of fixing things keeps you from the peace and joy of savoring. Remember, we've talked about this before. The dominant viewpoint of the ego in most moments is just dissatisfaction. Most of us are not walking around, most of us in a room like this, are not walking around most of the time with just dark rage or depression or stuff like that. Those tend to come and go. Most of us are wrapped up just in dissatisfaction. The traffic isn't moving fast enough. There are too many people in this line. We don't have enough closet space. I don't know what this bump is in my arm. Like, it's just the constant, endless, right? It's just the endless dissatisfaction. I can't be peaceful in this moment because it's too hot in here. It's too cool in here. I don't like the noise in the back. Why is the window that way? It's just an endless barrage of just dissatisfaction. Just like, I'll be happy after I fix this and fix this and fix this and fix this and fix this. I'll go to the dermatologist, and then I'll get some of this, and then I'll go and I'll have the car, and then I'll get my brother to talk to his wife about the thing and get them in therapy, and then I'll go to the thing. It's the endless fixing. So you just waste your whole fucking life trying to fix everything, and then, and then you die. Rosebud. Right? It's just, you just wasted a whole fucking life. All right. Okay, so then I want to jump into Treat Yourself to Life by Raymond Charles Barker. Now remember, Raymond Charles Barker was Louise Hay's first teacher. This is so good. This is so good. This is so good. This is so good. I have a lot to read in this one. Jesus was destroyed by the people who didn't like the way he did things. That's just like, how do you like the fucking simplicity and truth of that? Jesus was destroyed by the people who did not like the way he did things. We don't really like the way you're doing things. Therefore, we're going to kill you. Now, that's the story of humanity in many ways, is we don't like you having that land. We should have that land. Right? It's just the endless, we don't like the way you're doing things. I don't think Sandy Scott, if you know Sandy Scott, who was a minister with Terry Cole Whitaker Ministries, she's told this story a million times, so I don't think she would mind me telling it. She When she first got sober, she had a sponsor in AA who'd been sober for like 5 million years, and had many people that she had sponsored. And so she knew all the bullshit, and she, could pretty much peg what was going on with people. And this was years ago when they didn't have caller ID or anything like that. And so Sandy would call the sponsor, and as soon as she would hear Sandy's voice, she would say, "Well, if it isn't Her Majesty the baby, who's not doing things your way?" It was always that, right? Her Majesty the baby, who's not doing things your way? Because that's the problem. Who's not doing things your way? Isn't that most of your problem? That people are not doing things that's not the way you make coffee. I remember, this is no lie, I remember when I first moved to Santa Barbara. I live in LA now, but when I lived in Santa Barbara in 1990, I was roommates with this woman, Jay, who was, again, people who we should know better than this. She was a religious science practitioner and a rebirther, and rebirthing is all about fucking letting go. It's all about breathe it out, breathe it out, breathe it out, let it go. And her boyfriend, Art, was living there too. So the three of us were all living together, and she thought that she was smarter than Art. I want you to get this. And she looked at him as being not very bright, basically. And so I'll never forget sitting in the kitchen, and he was making a sandwich, and how she told him, "That's not how you make a sandwich." Does anyone recognize themselves in that story anywhere? That is not how you make a sandwich, okay? Now, what is fascinating to me about her thinking she was smarter than him was because she had some information. So she had more information perhaps, and not much really, to be honest with you. But she thought she had more information about things and how the world worked, because Art was truly a very simple person. And, he just was a very simple person. Like, when Art would come home from where he worked at a lumber yard, and he was not a wildly ambitious person, and she was somebody who'd always been drawn to powerful men. So men who were powerful and movers and shakers and ambitious and had money and and would buy her things, and she'd travel around the world with them, all this stuff. And then she had done this prayer for unconditional love, and Art literally knocked on her front door. He was staying across the street with his mother, and he literally knocked on her front door. And they fell in love, and they had a baby together, but she very quickly then decided that, this is the thing, we want love. When you want love, you'll see nothing else. But then you have to admit, do you get how this is all dovetailing? Is this really what I want to see? So she started looking at his guilt, the alertness of the ego to the lack and limitation and insufficiency. Do you understand? It doesn't have to be attack thoughts of ruthlessly hating someone. It's just looking at them and seeing, oh. Right? If you ever look at your spouse and go, oh. That's it. That's all you need. It's just that. That costs you the vision of heaven and peace and joy. You just hurled yourself fucking out on the dirt road again. You were all enlightened with your mate that you love and joy, and then he walked out with 2 mismatched socks, and you went, oh. Right? So she would look at him, and so, like, Art would come home in his pickup truck from the lumber yard, and that was all he was probably ever going to do, was work at the lumber yard and care about people. Help take care of his mother, who lived across the street. And, Jay was used to these men who would have, like, stupid fucking conversations about, what was happening in the stock market today and all their fears about they were going to lose their money in this thing they're building. And Art would come home and say, what'd you do today, Art? Or what happened how was your day? He said, oh, well, on the way home, I just stopped because there was this hawk. So I just watched this hawk going around this tree. And Jay would be like, fucking hawk in a fucking tree. Idiot. You understand? She'd asked for pure love. Here, pure love came. She's fucking tree in his hawk. Now, she's thinking, I'm smart. I'm too smart for him. I'm too smart for him. Now, think about this. Riddle me this. She spent tens of thousands of dollars over the year taking Terry Cole Whitaker classes and the S training and rebirther training and therapies so that she could work on herself every fucking day and rebirth herself in a hot tub, breathing through a snorkel to let go and let go and let go to get to the place that Art woke up at every day. So you tell me who's fucking so smart. You understand? He lived in a place that she had to work like a slave on a plantation to get to, so that she could then charge money to people to tell them how to get to that place. So it's the recognition of who's really so fucking smart here. The alertness of the ego to the insufficiencies and lackfulness of other egos is not the kind of vigilance the Holy Spirit would have you maintain. It's just to look at people and go, if you just would listen to me, right? Jesus was destroyed because they did not like the way he did things. The high-pressure people had him killed. During the 3 years of his teaching and producing results, he said often in effect, you're going to believe something. He discarded the force, the pressure, and the demands which other leaders of religion used. Jesus implied that you do not live the usual material way, you simply believe something. The public answer was nonsense. We must organize an army. We must get rid of these Romans. So we can bring this right into modern times, right? So basically what the people were saying, he was saying, it's not about changing the world and fixing it. It's about your consciousness. So in his day, when they said, you say you're, the Son of God, and so you're here to free us. So, historically, the Jews have been in bondage, and now we're paying all these taxes, and we're in a different kind of slavery. And so what you need to do is organize and get us out of this, right? You need to speak against the people in power. You need to organize a social movement. You need to change the tax laws. You need to put us into power. You need to do all these things, right? And what did Jesus say? Love your enemies. Bless those that curse you and pray for those who despitefully use you. And they said, fuck that shit. We don't like the way you do stuff. Get the cross. Right? Jesus implied that you do not live the usual material way. You simply believe something. The public answer was nonsense. So I'll put this in mind. We must organize an army. We must get rid of these Romans. We must lower the taxes. We must get rid of the guns in the schools. We must put this person out of office and put that person back in office. That's right. This is the mind, the supposedly spiritual mind. That's all about, we got to do this, and we got to take care of the children. We got to make sure that the immigrants, we have to do this, and we have to do this, and we have to do this, and we have to do this. Jesus' quiet answer was to the effect of, no, all you do is believe in yourself as God created. Now, we're still saying the same fucking thing. We have not left our theme for a moment with any of this. All you do is believe in yourself as God created. Naturally, the crowds didn't stay with him. They did not want to change their belief. It was easier, get this, it was easier to recruit an army as it is today than to think justice, order, and harmony about your fellow man. They did not want to believe a new idea. They wanted to act upon an old one. We all want to do something definite, but we shy away from believing a new idea. Jesus taught a principle of success premised on a law of belief, and a very simple law it was. If you believe it, you have it. This is so simple that it immediately strikes your intellect and it bounces back. This can't be so. It's too simple. So his followers took this simple idea and made it complicated. Right? That's how we have religion now. That's how we have holy wars. That's how we had, the Spanish Inquisition. We'll take a simple idea and we'll complicate it so that we can build a palace with gold thrones and crown a guy called the Pope. Sound good? Because otherwise it's just too simple. If you just can sit there and say, I am spirit, that ain't going to get me no fucking robe. Right? We need to have rules. We need to have rituals. We need to have property. They split it up into 3 ideas and built a church structure around it. Next came theologians who could argue about how many angels there were in heaven and how many devils there were in hell. This crucified the simple teaching of Jesus. Read the 4 Gospels and note the times where Jesus said, "Do you believe?" Or, "Do you have faith that this can be done?" He was constantly saying to people, "Do you believe?" When they replied that they did believe, he answered, "Then it is done." They reasoned this couldn't be, yet they realized they'd been instantly healed. It had been done. They still could not realize that it was not a miracle, that it was the law of acceptance and the law of belief. It was merely a spiritual use of mind, a spiritual use of consciousness. I have given this instruction for 50 years. I see mind and its action consciousness as the real person. The real you is your consciousness. It is your use of mind. Your consciousness includes both the conscious and subconscious action of mind. The real you is your use of mind, not your body. Your body has been changing constantly since the day you were born, nor are you the world about you, for that is also changing all the time. You are mind in action. You are feeling and thinking. You are consciousness. Jesus knew this, and he was able to do things which the people who didn't know it couldn't do. When you know a science which others don't know, you can do things they can't do. I don't know how to play the piano. I hear others play and enjoy them. I don't know how to play, so I can't play. They know how to play, so they can play. Jesus did something which anyone can do. He did things which other people couldn't do at that instant. Because they couldn't do them, they assumed they never could do them, and so they never tried to do them. Now we're coming back again with how I've harassed you all for months now to stop answering with, "I can't." To stop when some new thing comes up to going straight into, "I can't. I can't. I don't know how. I don't have the resources. I don't have the connections. I'm afraid. I can't." You move out of the place of "I can't" into, "Well, I don't know how right now, but with God all things are possible." I don't know how right now. The question isn't whether I can or can't. The question is it something I want? Am I willing? Treatment is so simple that you don't think you can do it, and because you don't think you can do it, you don't try it. Yet ever since the time of Jesus, people have been doing it unconsciously, and a few people have done it consciously. Treat yourself to a greater life. Don't assume that you can't do it or that it requires piety or theology. Assume that you can do it, and then assume to do it. If your mind is able to project far enough ahead, casting aside all that your human mind will tell you cannot be done, you will realize that you can do it. In your own consciousness, say, "I know what I want in my world. I'm going to believe that I have it." Your human mind argues, "Yes, but you don't have it. Your chances of getting what you want are very slight. You're getting too old to have it. With prices of everything going up, it's going to be harder to get what you want." You have humanly argued yourself out of more good than you will ever know. You have argued yourself out of untold good that could be yours by letting the outer mind describe all the reasons why it couldn't be done. Can you believe that you already have your heart's desire? That is the essence of treatment. If you believe that you have it, it happens, but it can't happen until you believe that you have it. A word of warning. Now a warning. Don't talk about treatment and demonstration to other people. They are incapable of believing it. Catherine Ponder always says, I don't know if this is really true, but she always says that sacred and secret have the same root meaning. Let's just assume that it does. So when you have something that's important, and Ernest Holmes talks about this a lot too, don't tell other people. It dissipates the energy because they will project their story onto it. So you keep something sacred and secret. if you're going to create something, especially something that's bigger than you've done before or bigger than something they've done before. You keep it sacred. You might tell it to, if you have a prayer partner, you have a practitioner or a minister or someone like that, then you share it there where there's an agreement of we hold each other in infinite possibility. We hold each other under the alignment of a higher authority. A friend came to my office and told me the complete disappearance of a cancer in its advanced stages through his own spiritual and mental treatment. He treated himself. It had been correctly diagnosed as cancer by the medical profession, and it disappeared. It disappeared in a matter of 36 to 48 hours after he had treated it. Now, some of you readers will say, I don't believe it. You have a perfect right to say that. You're honest. But there are a great many people in this country and in this world today who know that it is so. I have told my mind to be still and be assured more than I have ever said it to thousands of groups which I have addressed. I constantly say to my mind, be still. The limitation is not true. There is not a word of truth in it. It is not so. My human mind likes to disagree with spiritual ideas the same as your mind does. It tells me, you can't, you're too old, you shouldn't. What will people think? It's too expensive. And then I say to myself, stop, be still. I have accepted what I believe, and it will happen. You have to take power over your mind by telling it to be still. When your mind is going crazy, just say, stop, be still. And if it's still, even for a moment, you will have a sense of relief. You will have broken the pattern and have a sense of relief. But that's why the Course talks about it being a mind training. We just let our minds do whatever they want. Instead of saying, my mind is racing, I'm in fear, stop, be still, be quiet. All right, let me go, because we're we may still be here, Patty, in the morning. Okay. So you tell yourself, I can do this thing. I'm going to do it in the way of truth. I now believe it. I now accept it. I now act as though it were done, and I now let the law of mind do it. To my human mind, I say, be still. Keep out of the way. Don't confuse me. I'm working with a spiritual idea, and I will have my demonstration. The infinite responds to the finite in terms of the finite. God responds to me in my terms. The only obstacle to treating yourself to life at this instant is your own thought, and fear is the greatest obstacle to your mental growth. Replace it with faith through consistent treating, and you will become what you wish to be. In the last 80 years, psychology has moved fear from the realm of the universal into the realm of the individual. In the older religions, you were afraid of God. In the newer psychological teaching, you are afraid of yourself. When fear of God was taken out of religion, the fear of yourself was put in your mind. You're not afraid of God anymore, but you're afraid that you might be neurotic. So, again, it's remembering that that you that you're afraid of doesn't exist. It's a fictional self. It's not you. Keep coming back again. I am spirit. I actually am sort of winding down. I swear. So the other thing that I watched then was, which comes perfectly in alignment with this, is there was a documentary on PBS, and it was based on the Dylan Thomas poem, Do Not Go Gentle into That Good Night, Rage, Rage Against the Dying of the Day. So, which is about death, obviously. And what this woman did in this documentary, and I don't remember how many people were in it. There may be 6 people or a dozen people or something like that. And again, I think it was 2 fucking hours or something. I don't know. Like, where's the editor? Anyhow. And I didn't watch all of it because there were people I wasn't that interested in. But about half the people were the people who were like raging against the dying of the day. So they were like, I am not going gentle into that good night. I want to live as long as possible. And all different, like, there were people who were afraid of death, and then there was a guy who was like sort of one of the science guys who was like doing everything that you could possibly do. Like, I'm not talking about youthfulness. I'm talking about like cryogenic gene therapy to live, like maybe I could live to be 200. Like really like just staving it off inevitably no matter what to stay scientifically alive forever. So there were people like that. And then there were the people who were, I want to go gently, like I want to go. And there was a particular, I was most interested in people who'd had these near-death experiences. And there was a woman who I loved, who was, I think she was in her 80s. And she was one of the people who knew that she was going to die soon, because she'd been diagnosed with, since she was like, had maybe 6 months to live or something like that. But she had had a near-death experience like 50 years prior to this. And was right when she was, I think, a newlywed, and but her husband was an actual MD of some sort. I don't know what kind of, like a specialty or whatever she said, but I can't remember. But she wakes up in the middle of the night, and he's basically on her, pounding her chest because she's not breathing and da-da-da-da. And she's just coming in and out of consciousness, and hears him like shouting for the landlord down the hall to call for the, you know. So this would have been, I don't know what, in the 1960s or something like that. And so she's there in the hospital, in surgery room, and so the next thing you know, she's up in the corner, you know, because that's, so she's up there, she's like, I'm up there and I'm looking down, and I see that they're like pounding on me, and they're da-da, and then she sees them. What really fascinated me was, because there were several people who were on in their experiences, which are not all identical, a lot of them are similar, but she said her tunnel, which I love this, she said it was not like the dark tunnel with the light at the end. She said her tunnel was all deep green grass, which made perfect sense because she lived on a farm, and she's actually where she was being interviewed, she was sitting out on the back sort of redwood deck that was overlooking all the fields and everything, but she said it was all green, and she went in, and it was that whole peaceful, and she was great people that she recognized and all this stuff, and the voice said to her, you know, do you want to come, or do you want to go back? And she said, I think I want to go back and have his children. And as soon as she said that, bam, I was in my body. Like, it's always like that. As soon as you say, I think I'm gonna, bam, you're back in your body again. So she's like, I was there, and they were reviving me. And then, but what she said, but was interesting too, was she said, I could never talk about it with my husband because he just completely denied that it was a real experience. So when she started to tell it to him, he was like, he was a medical doctor, that's the brain, it's a hallucination, it's not real, there's nothing after this, when you're dead, that's it. So she just kept it to herself, basically, after that, because there was no conversation around that. But what she was saying that was great was, she was saying, you know, I buried him, and I buried my son, and I feel like I did everything that I came here to do, and I look forward to going. I know what it's like. I'm not worried about it. I've had the experience before. She said, I don't know where I'm going to be or anything, she said, but I would love it if I was sitting right here at this deck, at this table, at sunset, looking out over the fields with a bottle of Jack Daniels. I was like, sister, move over, I'll come. Whatever you say. But that only comes, that peace in the moment comes from what? I am spirit. I'm not this body. I'm going to vacate it. This is a rental. It's got to go. It's going to go back. Like, you got to return this thing at the end. It's just a loaner. Earth is nothing but a big temp assignment. Stop getting attached to your fucking cubicle. You're just on a temp job. You're going to do whatever you're meant to do while you're here. You can do it with joy, or you can do it with resistance. But if you're spirit, you realize, oh, this is just a blip in the screen. And this is, you know, the essence then of that recognition of your oneness with Source, instead of your oneness with your body, your oneness with your resume, your oneness with your accomplishments, your oneness with your stuff. You know Krishnamurti? Krishnamurti, who was he was actually trained by the Theosophical Society as a youth to take over the Theosophical movement, and then when he was sort of age to actually do it, he completely just dropped the whole thing and said, because it was a whole philosophy, and his teaching basically was, truth is a pathless land. There's actually no path to truth. And that's basically what we've been saying today. There's no path to I am spirit, you just recognize it. You don't have to do anything. There's no ritual to it. You can do rituals if you want to. Doesn't take anything. It's just a recognition. It's a pathless land. You don't have to go through phases or lessons or anything like that. If you do, it's fine. But it's really just the recognition that everything that's real can't be changed. And everything that's real is eternal. Course in Miracles says that. It says you're going to go through a process basically of just finding out the difference between what's valuable and what's valueless. And he says what's valuable is whatever is eternal, and everything that's not eternal is completely worthless. It's not worth anything at all. What does that mean? It means the form is worthless. It's only the content that's meaningful. The form of your relationship is meaningless. It's the content of your relationship. Because the form isn't eternal. But the content can be eternal. That's why the Course says those who meet will meet again. There's no such thing as ex-mates. No such thing as ex-friends, ex-employers, ex-nothing. The content will come back around to wholeness. Probably not in this body for lots of us in certain situations, because sometimes the person has already moved on, right? So it's this continual remembering this. So anyhow, Krishnamurti, who taught the truth is a pathless land, he said, do you want to know my secret? I don't mind what happens. I don't mind what happens. That's my secret. I don't mind what happens. Now, a lot of times, when you're coming from this awareness and knowledge and you speak about it, as I foolishly do in public, it sounds like you're apathetic. Because there are lots of things I don't care about. I don't care who the president is. I don't care if gay people are allowed to get married or not. I don't care about all those things out there. But it's not apathy, it's because of what I actually care about so passionately and devotedly and vigilantly, which is my connection to Source and my inner peace. Not apathetic about that at all. That's my devotion. My devotion is not to a political structure, because I'm not the effect of that. If you know who you are, it doesn't matter what the laws are. That's why the Course says, I'm under no laws but God's. Right? If you're in the country illegally and immigration comes for you, you say, these are not the droids you're looking for. And they don't take you. Do you understand? If you are coming from your power and knowing who you are because of your connection with Source, it doesn't matter what the laws are or the limitations or conditions under which you seem to be living. I don't mind what happens. You know, I probably shouldn't say this either, but because it's on tape. Then people might get, anyhow, it doesn't matter. Lots of you were here when I've talked about how in Santa Barbara the woman came, you know, like it's a Unity church and it's a sanctuary. And particularly, you know, it's been there for many, many years. And so they have a sign on the door that says, you know, no food or drink. I'm always amazed at people who would even think of eating in a sanctuary. It's so fucking disrespectful. But anyhow, whatever. But this woman came in and she was eating a bowl of oatmeal. Like, not even a power bar. She had a fucking bowl, not like a bowl at Starbucks with a plastic spoon and a microwave container. I mean like a bowl and a silver spoon from home, a bowl of oatmeal that she was sitting and eating in the sanctuary, and a cup of coffee. And so, and one of the things when I had first started speaking at Unity was the people who had brought me in were like, if people are eating there, they're going to throw you out of the space and you're going to lose the space. And so it was a big deal for a while of like policing people and don't bring your fucking Starbucks cups in and all this stuff. So I gave a whole talk about that, and we had lots of healings and stuff around that. I mean, the miracles that sort of happened out of people learning to be respectful. That spirituality is about not just thinking about your fucking self, which is news to a lot of people in New Thought. They thought, it's just really about me thinking about me, right? No. That is the different thing about A Course in Miracles, is A Course in Miracles says it really is about your relationship with other people. Like, you think you're pretty fucking spiritual when you're alone. It's easy to think you're real super fucking enlightened and spiritual when you're alone. Then you leave the house. That's when you find out, that's when the rubber hits the fucking road. It's like, oh God, there's other people out there. And they're not doing things my way. Right? So there can be a real narcissism sometimes around New Thought people who just really aren't thinking about, I'm affecting people in the room. Like, I should be on time. Like, I should treat people with respect and dignity. I shouldn't make noise that's going to bother other people who are sitting near me. I should, like, all of these things where you start to think about you're affecting other people. That's really respect for yourself to do that. So we talked about that. We had a lot of healings and stuff. But I was just saying to a friend the other day, I go in now and I set the rules. And I say, this is how it is. And I know that people are going to do whatever they want. So I say it. I'll even say it. No. But inside I'm like, I don't care. Because I know they're going to do whatever the fuck they want to. So I was saying to my friend on the phone, I said, you know, honestly, I just am so devoted to what matters and what's valuable and important. So I do. When I go into Santa Barbara, I say, because we don't have any people at the door or anything like that, and it's all on the honor system, and so I'm like, I just say, you know how I'm quiet and retiring, don't say what I really mean. So I say to people in Santa Barbara, it's at the beginning, I say, it's $20, it's not a suggested donation, it's tuition. If you didn't pay, get the fuck out. I say that at the beginning. Because I don't want it to be ambiguous. Because I don't want any of this bullshit where people think, oh, spiritual things shouldn't cost money. That is not a spiritual principle at all. There's nothing spiritual about that. That poverty consciousness is bullshit. So, but what I know is there still are going to be people who don't pay. But I just say it because somebody has to state how it is. But I'm not policing people. I said to my friend on the phone, I said, you know what? I don't care if someone fucking comes in and sits in the front row and carves a turkey. I don't give a shit. But I'm still going to say you can't do that and da-da-da-da, but then they're going to do whatever they want. And if we lose the space, I don't care about that either. Because they're not my source, and unity is not my source, and none of that is my source. If you know who you are and who your source is, you don't care about losing shit all the time, because life is loss continually. But what you cannot lose is your source. But if you lose your awareness of source, you're fucked. So I said, I don't care. If someone comes in and carves a turkey and we lose the space, then I guess I won't be speaking at Santa Barbara anymore. I don't make those decisions anyhow. I get up every day, we talked about this last month, and say, God, where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say? And to whom? And what I know in my own experience of connection to source is Spirit comes and gets me. Did you know that? Hey, if you make yourself available, Spirit will fucking come and get you. So you don't have to worry about like, oh, I have to make myself available. If you just say, hey, Spirit, you know where I'll be. I'm going to be shopping. I'm going to be having some wine. I might suck some dick. You know where I'll be. Some woman sent me an email. I might. Some woman sent me an email. Hey, it's all God from diamonds to dildos. Don't act like that's not spiritual. I'm doing it for God. Some woman sent me an email who I didn't know, who I think had just started coming to Vision. And she sent me an email saying, I've heard that you have these classes and they're good, and so I was thinking of coming. Is it actually $20? She said, is it $20 for everybody? She said, because I have 9-year-old twins. And is it $20 for everybody? So I just wrote her back and said, well, it is $20 for everybody. And I said, but this is an adult class with adult language and adult topics. So you need to decide whether it's something you want to bring your 9-year-old twins to. Because I don't care if they come, but I'm going to say the same thing regardless of whether they're in the room or not. It makes no difference to me. And so, because I don't see any difference. I mean, we've talked about this before. There cannot be, I have this spiritual life, and this is where God is in my life, but then I have this other life that I can't talk about because it's not appropriate. It's all God if you're coming from love in that moment. Understand that? You can be in a seedy bar in the middle of some crappy town surrounded by drug dealers, having a very holy experience, and you can be the head priest in some really serious monastery molesting kids. It's not about the place or the topic or the environment. It is about whether you are connected to Source when you're doing what you're doing. Nobody who's connected to Source molests kids. Understand? That's why the Course in Miracles is not about behavior modification. It's about connection to Source. It never tells you what to do. It only tells you what to think. Think this, I am spirit. Think this, I am under no laws but God's. Think, okay, all right. Stop me before I hurl myself into a new topic. I think I really covered everything, so let's hurry up and pray. Oh, wait, just one thing. Announcements. I just want to make a couple announcements for those of you who don't follow me. So, if you go to jacobglass.com, it has all this information on it, and you can read it. So, but the events that are coming up is I am doing a video class. The date is on there, but it's this month through Inspire, which is a spiritual organization. And it's live, so you can get on and do it on the computer and see the video, or if you have a phone, I think you can just do it over the phone. But all that information and the links to all of that is there, and the topic is creating miracles and living by grace. In June, I'm going to be speaking at the Sun Valley Wellness Festival in Idaho. So if you know anybody who's in that area, that'll be the last weekend in June, and that information is on there. Also, on May 23rd, Wednesday, May 23rd, I'm going to be speaking at the SALT Studio in Pasadena. So if you know anybody in Pasadena, that's on a Wednesday evening at 7. And the SALT Studio, you know, salt therapy. It's like that, where you go in the salt rooms and stuff like that. But I'm not speaking in the salt room. But they have those, it's all therapeutic and woo-woo and, you know, all that woo-woo stuff. And I don't know, maybe they have a little bookstore or something like that. And all the information for people who want recordings. We still are making CDs for the rest of this year. And then that's it. No more CDs, just all MP3s. So the full, 2.5 hours will be on MP3, but only an hour and 20 minutes on a CD. But those are $25 donation that you can either mail in or do through PayPal through the website. You can get them weekly if you want. All of that is explained on there. The website has my links to my YouTube channel and Instagram and all that kind of stuff. And now we pray. Close our eyes. Take a deep breath. Relaxing into the awareness, I am spirit. No body can contain me or impose on me a limitation God created not. I am spirit, infinite, limitless spirit, connected to my source, this loving, joyous, beneficent, generous, giving God. There is no reason for me to ever fear the will of God, because it is always better than my idea, better than my plan, better than my strategy. So I eagerly align with it. I am not at war with my source. In fact, I'm giving up war altogether. I'm giving up conflict and attack so that I can know the peace of God. Let's take a deep breath. Let go. Let go. If there's anything you brought in here with you this morning, just look to see anything that you brought in that no longer serves you, whether it is a limiting belief, a worry, a regret, an attachment, a fear. You have an opportunity to release it, not to get rid of it, but to release it to God, to Spirit, to Source. To say, take this. It's a story. I want to be free of it, so I let go of it now and give it to you. We're going to let it go with the exhale. So take a nice deep breath and breathe it all out. Releasing it now in gratitude as we turn to the Holy Spirit within us, offering our hands and our feet and our voices, asking, where would you have us go? What would you have us do? What would you have us say, and to whom? We remember now, as always, the way that we will know love and the way that we will feel love is by this infinite love moving through us to the world around us. For this we are thankful, and together we all say, Amen. You might want to take a stretch. Okay, so just quickly, that website also has my email address, so if you have any questions or anything like that, you can do it there. I don't take questions or anything at the end here because I have to get back to Los Angeles. But have a fabulous month. Thank you for tuning in this whole long, long seminar. Thank you.